Welcome to Unlocking Your Truth, another podcast by Dr. Lesley Phillips.
Everyone, welcome to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley. My name is Dr. Lesley Phillips and I will be your host for the next hour. We've got a great show for you this evening. We are hoping to have someone on the show who has written a book about crop circles. So the theme of tonight's show is crop circles. Now, the name of our guest is Gary Borborff. Let me tell you a little bit about Gary. Bachelor's degree in philosophy from UBC and a master's in psychology from the Pacifica Graduate Institute of Santa Barbara. And you're an expert on archetypes and how we can use archetypes to take charge of our lives. And Gary's written a book called Crop Circles, Jung and the Reemergence of the Archetypal Feminine. Now, we've had Gary on the show before to talk about archetypes, so today we thought it would be good fun to have a chat with him about the fascinating phenomenon of crop circles. So welcome to the show, Gary. It's great to have you back on. Did I miss anything in the introduction that you'd like our listeners to know about you?
That's great. No, that's perfect. Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll dive straight in and you can fill us in. So for listeners who might not, I think pretty much everyone's heard of crop circles, but just in case there's anyone listening who doesn't know what a crop circle is, can you describe what a crop circle is?
Sure. So a crop circle is an image in wheat made in living plants where the wheat is downed in the form of a shape. So you might have a ring, or you might have a circle, you might have those kind of basic images, or they get much more complex. But it's a downed area of crop such that it creates an image to be seen from above.
Fabulous. And many of these images they're almost like mandalas, aren't they? They're highly symbolic, geometrical, symmetrical images in the crops.
So you could say a snow angel in wheat.
Or barley.
Or barley or anything.
Yeah. So, and these things are fascinating, aren't they, Gary? What are some of the theories that people have come up with to explain the mystery that is crop circles?
Well, I think there's three basic categories of explanation that people sort of mix together or go into when they're approaching the phenomenon. So one of the theories is that it has to do with something with, UFOs or extraterrestrials, obviously. Another one is that it has something to do with something spiritual. And the third one is that it has to do something with the earth. And a lot of people, believe that there's a combination of those three things going on here. A big thing I look at in the book is what happens to us when we come upon something that is mysterious. What is our process when something that is unknown to us crosses our path? And, for a lot of people, Churchill has a great quote about that. He says, most of us stumble over the truth from time to time, or everyone stumbles over the truth from time to time, but most people pick themselves up and hurry off as though nothing ever happened. And that's the dominant response of our culture today, is to kind of dismiss the whole thing and pretend like it hasn't happened. And I think that says a lot about our character.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, because it's very surprising, isn't it, that there is not more information out there in the mainstream media about this, because whether it's UFOs, a spiritual phenomenon, or some kind of earth-based phenomenon, it's still something amazing and unbelievable and new and different than we normally know about. And so it's absolutely fascinating that it gets swept under the carpet. Now, out of those three theories, those three main theories, what do you believe? Which one do you believe?
I generally don't give my answer to that, because I think it's what's important is that people do their own homework here, and most people don't ever do their homework about most things, and this is just one more thing like that. It's so much easier for people to short circuit the process by putting it into a box that they've already got, that they imagine they already have made. So, for example, I certainly think that there's, at least in part, something that we might call extraterrestrial, that there's some kind of other beings involved here, whatever we want to label them. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people will come into the world of crop circles, and they will sort of go, oh yeah, crop circles, aliens, we're done.
Right.
And off they go. And, here you have this phenomenon that has so much tremendous depth of imagery, of content and meaning. Here we have, formations formed in living plants, in beautiful fractal images often. And there's so much deeper that we can go to consider, even for ourselves. I don't think anyone's going to give you the answer to the mystery here, but there's such a deep process that we can begin with. Let's say that someone thinks they're extraterrestrials, which I don't have a problem with at all. I believe that that's absolutely a possibility. I believe there's other beings in the universe besides human beings. If you think it's extraterrestrials, what do you imagine those extraterrestrials to be? Who are they? What do they look like? So, all of us, when we encounter something that we don't understand, our knee-jerk reaction of the rationalistic society that we're growing up in, is to put that in a box immediately, to be certain, have the answer right away, and that short circuits a process of deeper consideration that I think we're very much invited to here with this phenomenon.
No, I think you're absolutely right. As soon as we stick a label on something, then we're just looking at the very, very surface level of it. And exactly, each individual I imagine, has their own unique experience of crop circles, even if they're visiting them or if they're researching them online. To one person, it might be a deeply spiritual experience. To another person, it might be a fascinating scientific investigation, or, whatever it is. I'm sure it can be a completely unique experience and unique concept for everyone. And so, not to stick a label on and just, walk over it like that is, I agree with you. Now, so there's been all sorts of interesting phenomenon associated with crop circles, hasn't there? Like, I believe that there's been sightings of balls of light, and even somebody caught on camera a crop circle being formed. Can you tell us more about some of the phenomena that people have experienced in the crop circles?
Sure. Yeah, and I think it's important to say as well is that chapter 1 and 2 of my book are the science and the history. So scientifically, we know there's a real phenomenon here. We know from the cellular level change in the authentic phenomenon to the plants.
Well, why don't you go on to tell us about that? Because that's fascinating in its own right. The research that they've done on the plants.
And that ties in with what people have seen. We know that in the genuine article, and there is absolutely, the crop circles are two different phenomenon. There's the genuine article and there's a man-made hoaxed phenomenon.
Yeah.
So my book is about the genuine article, and in chapter 1 we look at the science. And the science shows us cellular level changes to the plants. Mm-hmm. Physical changes to the plants, including bent nodes, blown nodes, stretched nodes, microscopic magnetic particles fused into the grain often. In fact, so much so that one in Saskatchewan was able to be held up with a magnet. A piece of wheat was able to be held up with a magnet because there was so much iron magnetite fused into it. So biochemical changes, Lucy Pringle's done a great job looking at that, and you can check out bltresearch.com for a lot more of the details here. You'll see electromagnetic changes not only in the wheat, but in the area and the dirt surrounding it. So, the physical changes, the scope, the speed, the size, electromagnetic changes, germinal changes, cellular changes, all of this comes together to give us an objective jumping-off point from which we can say, okay, there's something going on here that isn't man-made. When we turn in Chapter 2 to look at the history, we see that there's archival documents going back into the 17th century, including the famous mowing devil woodcut, where people have a drawing and describe a story of what they call a devil making a crop circle, and that reflects the medieval mindset of the time. And then shortly after that, you have an Oxford professor recording them, and he expects it to be some kind of a weather phenomenon. And there you see the Enlightenment mindset coming into it. In 1880, the English journal Nature describes a crop circle exactly from a letter that someone wrote in saying, "What is this? Has anyone else seen this?" And when you look at all of this, you start to think this could have been going on for a very long time. And in fact, the connection you mentioned about balls of light and all that, well, even in the geography of the land in the Wiltshire region of the UK where a lot of this is happening, has places with names like Golden Ball Hill and other names.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Even people will know Silbury. Well, Silbury means people of light. So there's all these ways that the geography of the land there is already connected to seeing balls of light, or what some people call a will-o-wisp here in North America. And there's a long tradition. If you read The Fairy Faith in Celtic Countries by Evan Wentz, a very popular book on that topic, he cataloged people talking about things like the light candle, where when the soul leaves the body, it becomes like an orb of light and it moves around. So it's woven into the mythology and the spoken folklore of not only the UK, but across Europe and into North America. And there's many, many more stories than that. But there does seem to be a correlation between crop circles and these balls of light. Eyewitnesses have seen lots of different things, but some of them have seen either beams of light or balls of light making the formation. Other people have seen a mist descend and then leave, and then the formation is there. And to me, the variety of these eyewitnesses isn't a negative. It actually is kind of a positive. It speaks to a kind of multidimensionality of whatever's making it. And there are many, many eyewitnesses now that have seen these things. So, we know that something is going on. Then it becomes on us to say, well, what do we believe? And I think a primary character of our age is that we pretend that things like this don't exist. We imagine all the mystery and the magic is gone from the world.
But they are fascinating, aren't they? Corey and I were watching last night. We watched 2 movies on crop circles to get ourselves in the mood for this interview. And one of the ones that was the most fascinating, I think, to both of us was a crop circle that was created near a giant, what do you call those things? The communication device that beams out to space. A satellite.
A radio transmitter.
Radio transmitter. And they had in the crop next to the radio transmitter, there was something that... Well, first of all, a face that looked like an alien face. And then 3 days later... a kind of a communication. And the communication was a direct response to something that was beamed out into space, I think in the 1970s, by Carl Sagan. And
1974.
Yeah, and he'd beamed out into space information about the location of our planet, the primary carbon in the primary main
carbon-based.
Carbon-based life forms, and what we looked like, and what our genetic code was like, and just some basic information. And this crop circle was returned the exact same message in the same format, except whoever, if you believe that another group from another planet had sent it, they'd said, well, we're silicon-based, and we inhabit 3 planets, in relation to our sun, and there are 51 billion of us, and
they're shorter,
and
we
have a bigger head, and this is our genetic code, and that was absolutely fascinating, because apparently not very many people had known about this message that had been beamed out by NASA.
Well, they knew the message, but they didn't know the content of the message, which was interesting.
Right. So, Gary, we're hoping that you're going to call us back, but in the meantime, I guess we can talk about what we learned by reading Gary's book and by watching these films about crop circles. Now, the other thing I wanted to ask Gary was if he'd ever been in one, because I haven't, even though I come from England, which is where most of them are. I mean, that was another question. When they looked at the statistics of where they are, yes, there's examples in Canada and the US, but the very vast majority of them are in Europe. And of the ones in Europe, the vast majority of those are actually in the UK, and they're within a very specific location in the UK.
93% of them are on a chalk-based.
That's right. It's water, chalk. It's aquifers.
Sure. Well, there's a geological signature that goes on that is required, that may obviously is connected to why they can appear in some places and not in others. And there's maybe an electrical component to that, because what you see across the summer as the water recedes is that the crop circles follow that receding pattern across the UK.
Meaning there's more as it recedes?
As the water recedes, the formations follow that recession.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So as the spring, the wet ground of the summertime, is dried up, the crop circles follow that drying pattern. So, there's even things like geological factors at work here, which is part of the evidence for understanding the mystery as being an objective one, that we can say objectively there is a real mystery going on here. And as I was saying when we get cut off, so much of our society wants to imagine that all that mystery and magic from the world is gone.
Why is that, Gary? Why? Why do you think that is?
Well, that's one of the main things that I talk about in the book, is the masculine and the feminine. And, the journey of human evolution, one way you can understand it is through terms like masculine and feminine. And when I use those terms, I'm not referring to male and female, and I'm not referring to patriarchy and matriarchy. What I'm talking about is a psychological quality in all of us, in men and women alike, of a masculine energy and a feminine energy, of masculine modes and feminine modes. And so with, the feminine mode is about connection and feeling and that unity of oneself with another thing. So, the unity of nature as a whole cycle. The masculine energy is associated with a separation and distance and objectivity. So the masculine breaks out of the sort of unity of mother and child. You get the masculine that breaks out of that and becomes its own separate being. And that energy is what, lies behind our thirst for objectivity and clarity and rationality. In the old languages, the alchemical languages, you have the terms solar and lunar, or the word logos, which means truth, and eros, which means feeling, or yin and yang in the Chinese way of being. And, masculine has to do with, in our time, with ego consciousness, with certainty and stability. And the feminine, is more about the body and the connection and the sort of mystery of the miracle of life. And that sort of, the seed that goes into the ground and then life emerges out of there. That kind of, that is things that we associate in the Jungian world with the feminine and the masculine. And I think you can understand the journey of consciousness over time as one that you can see, in the last couple hundred years, that we get more and more and more on this masculine trip where we repress the body and we put the shadow onto the feminine and sexuality, and we're more and more up into our heads and more invested in our ability to understand the world and more caught in the magic of our own creative power. And, there's a great quote that says, essentially that, we have so much information about the world that it brings up the danger of confusing measurement with mastery. We've measured the world so extensively that we, very arrogantly assume that we've mastered it. And so there's this way that, we've gone up and up and up on this masculine trip that we think we are, the only conscious entity in the world, and we're in an inflated state. We're lost in infatuation with our own creative power, with our technology, and there's this feeling that we have to be certain all the time. That's the masculine. Have all the answers all the time. And that makes us allergic to the mystery. And so, crop circles not only represent that energy, they're bringing it back to us because they force us to sit with a mystery that we can't solve. Yet, at the same time, this mystery is one that is evocative of feeling. It's artistic. It's beautiful. So, that's kind of what I would say about that.
And what types of experiences have people had being in the energy of a crop circle? And you, for example, Gary, you must have visited a crop circle.
Sure.
So what was your personal experience, and what other personal experiences have you heard about?
Well, there's all kinds of experiences. So first of all, there's a high level of electromagnetic energy in a fresh one. So if you're in a real one, there may be the experience of feeling that powerful electromagnetic energy. And the people's responses to that vary a great deal. Some people may feel that, well, there's too much energy there, I shouldn't go in. Some people might feel actually sick because of that level of energy. On the other hand, some people have felt tremendously good. There's Lucy Pringle, is a famous crop circle photographer and researcher. She's cataloged tons of experiences of people having healings in them. My own experience, the best experience I had was in Saskatchewan in a very humble, beautiful, simple circle that very few people were ever in, that was very fresh when I was in it. And I really had the feeling of being almost disoriented by it. I walked the lay of the crop formation and felt myself wondering, wow, where's the car and all this? And I never have that feeling of disorientation. So I knew then that something was going on here that was quite real. And I had been in a formation only a few weeks before that was gigantic, 1,000 feet across, 409 circles, perfect fractal geometry, and hadn't felt as much in that, simply, I think, because so many people had been through it and it was older. So I think there's a variety of experiences we can have, and I think for me that was a bit of a confirmation for myself that, okay, this is real. But people can go out there, again, with their own equipment and check those kind of levels themselves and objectively pursue this. I mean, that's the great thing about the crop circles is they're available to everyone to go and do their own research for themselves.
Right. That's if their equipment works. I mean, I hear that sometimes people's cameras and stop working when they go inside the crop circle with them. I saw another, talking about sort of personal experiences, and what's not really a personal experience, but I saw a video of some people who they were in a crop circle and they were holding their hands out, and their hands were going sort of patchy and white in places as they got closer to the crop. And then they would lift them up and move them further away from the crop, and the white patches would disappear, and then they would put them closer to the crop. And you could literally, see the change happening.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Quite fascinating.
Wow, I haven't seen that. That's enough.
Yeah, that was on I'll send you the name of the film that we watched that was on.
Yeah.
So what haven't we asked you that we should have asked you that you'd like to tell us about crop circles?
Well, I'll tell you a few things that are just sort of events about it, and then I can go on and tell you more about how I approach it. So I was lucky this past weekend, I was up in Salmon Arm, meeting with the Questers, which are a great group. You know about the Questers?
Yeah, they are great, yeah.
Yeah, so they've had a lot of great speakers out there, and was able to talk about it with them, and that was wonderful. And then next Tuesday, I'm starting a webinar where we look at each factor that I'm talking about here and spend 5 2-hour sessions looking at it more. And you can go to jungianonline.com/crop circles and get the information on that. So, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, my book is 350 pages. There's a lot more we get into it. And a lot of it has to do with the feminine, because I think here we have this phenomenon that's in living grain. It's in living plants. And that is a symbol that is strongly associated with the feminine.
Yeah.
And here we are in a time that has really, really lost the feminine. I mean, so much so that, Jung said that the profoundest problem afflicting the human psyche is an imbalance which favors masculine principles and archetypes over feminine ones. And, you can tell our society has lost the feminine through things like materialism. And in Jungian psychology, we look at the root of words, and the root of materialism is mater, and that's where we get the word mother, Latin for mother. So, it's the shadow mother that we, go and are compulsively shopping, compulsively going after her that way. And, think of the American Thanksgiving and how that is supposed to be a time of giving thanks for the miracle of life and the fruit of the earth. And it's strongly associated, of course, with Black Friday. I mean, they may as well call it, they may as well call it Shadow Goddess Friday, and you see the sort of orgy of unconsciousness in that and the drive for these possessions, right? So our society is hungering for a real connection with the sacred feminine and the miracle of life, in a world where all of us are treated as objects, So, we've got a choice. If we want to find that connection, we've got to find it for ourselves. There's a tradition that I talk about when I present on this topic. The tradition is of doing the corn dollies, and that's where you take the final sheaves of wheat and you form it into a cross or a doll or some other form that is a way of giving thanks for what you have received. Often it's placed over the mantle or the hearth, or paraded around in some European traditions. And of course, that has faded away in our modern era, and yet something else is coming back to weave the crop in a different way. And so to remind us of that connection to the feminine.
Yeah, and I guess, they're out there in nature. They're inviting us to leave our material, concrete jungles and go out and rediscover.
Yes, and the plants are still alive.
Yeah.
The plants are still alive. They're, in the fake formations, they've crunched everything down and it's broken over and all that. In the real ones, they're bent. It's as if something said, ask them to bend, bend over at 90 degrees, and those bends are hardened. So, but the plant is still alive. What a tremendously interesting mystery.
Yes.
And then
I was fascinated. I was fascinated to read. I'm originally a biologist, believe it or not. So I was fascinated to read that they've done some experiments on the grains, and depending on the age of the crop, when it gets turned into a a crop circle. If it's really young, I think that, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the grains don't germinate. But if it's a more mature crop and they plant the grains, the plants that grow faster and a higher yield by about 30%. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the things they think, that the cellular level change allows more energy to go through. So you will see increased growth. And one of the ways that you'll see that is when a crop circle comes down, that those seeds are hard for the combine to pick up. And so a lot of them stay in the ground, and they're there next year for the next year's crop. Well, you'll often see a sort of a visual echo of the form, in the form of, if it's a circle, next year's crop will have a circle of raised grain, of grain that's growing higher, right?
Wonderful.
So, it's one of these, again, go ahead.
One of the things that got me about that was on the wheat, when they were showing one of these videos that the wheat that was still standing, the beards, the wheat, the stalk, not the stalk, but the flour itself was bent over, and it's crisp, it's hard. But the ones that were laying down were straight.
Yes.
The beards themselves.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting.
So, Gary, thank you very, very much for coming on the show again. And do you want to remind the listeners about your webinar that you're doing?
Sure. Yeah, the website for the webinar is Jungian, Jungian, online, jungianonline.com/crop circles. Jungianonline/crop circles is the website for the information on the webinar, and it starts next Tuesday, 5 2-hour sessions, and you can find the rest out there. And thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you very much for a fascinating discussion, Gary.
Thanks a lot, Gary.
Yeah, and good luck with the webinar and everything else.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Hello everyone, welcome back to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley. My name's Dr. Lesley Phillips and I'm your host. We've been talking about crop circles this evening and whether they are messages from visitors from another world, whether they are a way of us tuning back into our divine feminine and spiritual nature, or whether they have something to do with the planet herself. And now we're at that time in the show where we're taking your calls. So if you would like to join in the conversation about crop circles, if you've ever been in one, phone us up and tell us your experiences. Or if you have a question and you want an intuitive insight.
The first one I think we will do is from Iris. And Iris asks, I feel as though I have had blocks in my financial gains as well as in my love life. I'm a single mom with a child with no help from family. Can you tell me if or when my situation will turn around for the better?
Okay. Well, let's see if we can help you with some information there, Iris. So give me a moment and I will tune in to you. And take a look at these blocks to your financial abundance and your romantic life. And of course you asked if or when it will change, and I'll give my usual answer, which is that's really up to you because you create your reality. But let me just see. So I am it's kind of interesting when I look at you. It's almost like you're sitting in a cup of limits. So here's you looking all bright and creative, and your creativity is surrounded by some limits. So let's take a look at what those limits are. You know what? And as always, it's beliefs that you are choosing to operate from. And of course, you create your reality through your beliefs. So whatever beliefs you're choosing to operate from, that's causing whatever reality you're in to form around you. And so one of the blocks has to do to the romantic life has to do with things like, well, I'm a single mum and who's going to want to be with someone who's got a child, and those kind of things. And I'm seeing plenty of people would be quite delighted about that, but you're not believing that they will be, and so you're a match for what you're believing. So that's one of the things on the romantic front that's a block. And let me see what else I can see. I'm going a bit quiet, which is always awkward on air, but sometimes I just need to look at the energy a bit more, and I'm looking at now on the financial side as well. To some degree, it looks like you're caught in struggle and effort, and just self-limiting beliefs about what's possible for you. And so really, if you can let go of those self-limiting beliefs, I'm seeing it's easier for abundance and romance to flow to you and to appear in your life. That's really it, really.
That's it?
Yeah, that's all I'm seeing, Corey.
Oh, that's it. All right.
Yes,
well, what you see is what you get.
That's exactly it. What you see is what you get, so...
Okay, I have a question from Fran.
Mm-hmm.
And Fran... it's quite a serious question. She wants to know, how serious is my uterine condition? Is it really necessary to have surgery?
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's take a look. We've been talking about the feminine. Let's take a look at your female reproductive system. And you say Fran is the name, and she has a uterine condition. So I am definitely seeing that there is, it looks like there's some pastime energy that is stored in that area of your body. And it looks quite dense to me, and it looks quite solid. And if we don't listen to our body's emotional messages, then oftentimes what will happen is it will scream louder, usually by creating something physical for us to pay attention to. I feel like what I want to say is, to me, it does look like you have a physical condition, and it does look like if you made the choice to have surgery, it would be a way of moving that out rapidly. Now, could you heal this another way? Through energy healing and so on? Yeah, it's certainly possible, but to me, in a way, it looks like a combination of the two, and that the fastest route to creating a change might be to have the surgery. That's what I'm getting for that one, Corey.
You mentioned the word surgery, and it was very interesting. I just wanted to mention to the callers, I had to have surgery last week on my eye. Had some scar tissue that had to be removed, and I was able to, as opposed to while they were doing the surgery, I was able to see the surgery through my eye. Most people, it grays out and they don't see anything. But I can tell you, it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life, seeing them remove this with a little pair of tweezers, microscopic tweezers, in the back of the eye, and the inside, of course, and sucking it out with this tiny little vacuum. Yeah. And now I have water and air in my eye.
And sometimes we, just back to Fran's question, sometimes we think that if we have to resort to surgery, that's a bad thing, and that we should be able to heal it by other means. But, Not necessarily. Sometimes surgery can be a great way to create a change very quickly, and that's really what I was seeing for Fran. I was seeing that you do have a physical problem there, and that surgery might be the quickest way.
And sometimes challenges, physical challenges. I remember my professor when I was studying psychology for my PhD stated something called secondary gain. And secondary gain is when people have an illness such as depression and they don't want to come out of it. It's not a conscious thing, because if they come out of it, the secondary gain, which is people, oh poor thing, you're like, they don't get this attention. And sometimes the universe has a way of playing with illness to get us a certain amount of attention or something different than we are at now. We never know what the purpose of an illness is in essence. Sometimes it can be a good thing, even though we don't see it until we've gone a few steps down the road.
It certainly gives us an experience. But, in Fran's case, I'm seeing that, you're looking for what you need to do. Yes. And you're wanting to heal yourself, and to me, this, and I don't want to make up your mind for you.
Yeah, exactly.
But it
looks bright.
It looks, surgery looks like it would create the change more quickly in this case.
Yeah. Don't feel bad going to a doctor. It's not. No, never feel bad going to a doctor. They're there to help as well. And so I got one more for you from Kaylee. Kelly's got a tough one for you. What's my life purpose? Have you heard that one before?
I have. Do you know what, listeners? I've heard that one about 450 times before, at least in the last year. It's the most common question that I get asked, actually. So, Kaylee, what's your life purpose? Oh, well, let's see in the space of 5 minutes whether we can give you some information. Well, I always say everyone has at least 2 life purposes, and one is to operate consciously as spirit in the material world through the physical body. And so that's a common purpose that humanity shares, and I tell everyone, one of the best ways to help you do that is to get grounded. And so the first thing I'm seeing about you and your energy, one of the reasons that you don't know what your life purpose is because the temporal self, the body personality, is not connecting very strongly with your higher self and your own guidance, because you're having a tendency not to be grounded. And so learning how to ground, and you can go to the podcasts at drlesleyphillips.com and find a podcast on grounding so that you can learn how to do it. So step number 1, get grounded, get conscious, awake and aware, clean out your body, because looks like you've stored some pain in your body as well, and some invalidation in your body. And so you can use the grounding to help you let go of that. And then your question, which is really directed at what's unique about me, what's special about me, what's different about me, what do I have to offer the world that nobody else has? And I'm seeing that it's got something to do with healing. Actually, it's got something to do with healing. And as is the case, I believe, with a lot of healers, it's like first you have to experience that level of transformation and shift within yourself before you can have compassion and understanding to help others do it. So I'm seeing that part of your path is about healing yourself, and then part of your path is about sharing what you've learned with other people. And it looks to me like you have the capacity for a high degree of compassion, and of that, we were talking earlier in the show about the divine feminine and the feminine nature of nurturing and mothering. I'm seeing that that's something that's a powerful component of who you are. And The other thing that I am picking up on when I tune into your energy is one of the ascended masters. So the Virgin Mary, who is an ascended being, I'm seeing her energy very much be around you and connecting with you and wanting to assist you and wanting to teach you and teaching you about. We often have an image of her as being, compassionate and maternal and loving and caring, and she does carry all of those energies, but she's also good at setting all of the other things that you need to be a healer, which is to be able to set boundaries, to be able to be certain, and to be able to... There's kind of like a no-nonsense aspect of it. I mean, if you go in... I've never stayed overnight in hospital, but I imagine this. The nurses are sometimes very no-nonsense, aren't they? They're very practical, caring, but no-nonsense, and
battle axes.
And get on with it. And I'm seeing that's another vibrational frequency that's around you, and that this being is teaching you about. So I'll see if there's anything else, and of course if we had you on the line we could quiz you a little bit about your interest in healing and whether you've had any experience in healing and in what form that has taken so far in your life. But it does look like working with people who are ill, and maybe even working with people who are terminally ill, and because it looks like you have a capacity to just be with someone and be still and be a loving, caring, healing presence, and you also have a capacity to know and tune into what they need in the moment.
I also see her working with, you touched on it, with kids, with tweens and teens.
Okay, great.
Thank you for joining us. You've been listening to another Unlocking Your Truth podcast by Dr. Lesley Phillips. For more information, go to our website at drlesleyphillips.com. That's drlesleyphillips.com, where you can ask questions or send her an email, and there's many free gifts on there for you as well. Come back again.